Robert W. Service, the bard of the Klondike, did not reach the gold fields until many years after the great stampede was ended. And some of his best northern verse was written before he actually saw Dawson City or the storied creeks that made it famous. This is true of the lyrical verse which put a new phrase into the language, the spell of the Yukon. I wanted the gold, and I sought it. I scrabbled and mucked like a slave. Famine, scurvy, I fought it, hurled my youth into a grave. I wanted the gold, and I got it. Came out of the fortune last fall. Yet somehow, life's not what I thought it. And somehow the gold isn't all. No, there's the land. Have you seen it? It's the cussedest land I know, from the big dizzy mountains that screen it to the deep death-like valleys below. Some say God was tired when he made it. Some say it's a fine land to shun. Maybe. But there's some as'd trade it for no land on earth. And I'm one. You come to get rich, damn good reason. You feel like an exile at first. You hate it like hell for a season. Then you're worse than the worst. It grips you like some kind of sinning. It twists you from foe to a friend. It seems it's been since the beginning. Seems it'll be to the end. The summer no sweeter was ever, the sunshiny woods all a thrill, the grayling a leap in the river, the bighorn asleep on the hill, the strong life that never knows harness, the wilds where the caribou call, the freshness, the freedom, the farness. Oh, God, how I'm stuck on it all. The winter, the brightness that blinds you, the white land locked tight as a drum, the cold fear that follows and finds you, the silence that bludgeons you dumb, the snows that are older than history, the woods where the weird shadows slant, the stillness, the moonlight, the mystery. I'd bid him goodbye, but I can't. There's a land where the mountains are nameless, where the rivers all run God knows where. There are lives that are erring and aimless, and deaths that just hang by a hair. There are hardships that nobody reckons. There are valleys unpeopled and still. There's a land, oh, it beckons and beckons, and I want to go back, and I will. They're making my money diminish. I'm sick of the taste of champagne, thank God. When I'm skinned to a finish, I'll pike to the Yukon again. I'll fight, and you bet it's no sham fight, it's hell. But I've been there before. It's better than this by a damn sight. So me for the Yukon once more. There's gold, and it's hunting and hunting. It's luring me on as of old. Yet it isn't the gold that I'm wanting so much as just finding the gold. It's a great big broad land way up yonder. It's the forests where silence holds lease. It's the beauty that thrills me with wonder. It's a stillness that fills me with peace. El Dorado Creek runs into Bonanza Creek, and Bonanza runs into the Klondike. And the richest ground in the world lay on El Dorado. There were some 40 claims here, each of which produced more than $1 million apiece. But very few of the men who struck it rich on El Dorado were able to hang on to their gold, as Service suggests in his ballad, The Man from El Dorado. He's the man from El Dorado, and he's just arrived in town in moccasins and oily buckskin shirt. He's gaunt as any Indian and pretty nigh as brown. He's greasy and he smells of sweat and dirt. He sports a crop of whiskers that would shame a healthy hog. Hard work has racked his joints and stooped his back. He slops along the sidewalk, followed by his yellow dog. But he's got a bunch of gold dust in his sack. He seems a little wistful as he blinks at all the lights. Maybe he is thinking of his claim in the dark and dwarfish cabin where he lay and dreamed at nights. Thank God he'll never see the place again. where he lived on tinned tomatoes, beef embalmed, and sourdough bread, on rusty beans and bacon furred with mold. His stomach's out of kilter and his system full of lead, but it's over, and his poke is full of gold. He's panted at the windlass, he has loaded in the drift, he has pounded at the face of oozy clay. He has taxed himself to sickness, dark and damp and double shift. He's labored like a demon, night and day. And now, praise God, it's over. And he seems to breathe again of new-mown hay, the warm, wet, friendly loam. He sees a snowy orchard and a green and dimpling plain, and a little vine-clad cottage, and it's home. He's the man from El Dorado, and he's had a bite and sup, and he's met in with a drouthy friend or two. He's cached away his gold dust, but he's sort of bucking up, so he's kept enough tonight to see him through. His eye is bright and genial, his tongue no longer lags. His heart is brimming o'er with joy and mirth. He may be far from savory, he may be clad in rags, but tonight he feels as if he owns the earth. Says he, "Boys, here's where the shaggy north and I will shake. I thought I'd never manage to get free. I kept on making misses, but at last I've got my stake. There's no more thawing frozen muck for me. I'm going to God's country, where I'll live a simple life. I'll buy a bit of land and make a start. I'll carve a little homestead and I'll win a little wife and raise 10 little kids to cheer my heart." They signified their sympathy by crowding to the bar. They bellied up 3 deep and drank his health. He shed a radiant smile around and smoked a rank cigar. They wished him honor, happiness, and wealth. They drank into his wife-to-be, that unsuspecting maid. They drank into his children, 50 score. And when they got through drinking, very tenderly, they laid the man from El Dorado on the floor. He's the man from El Dorado, and he's only starting in to cultivate a $1,000 jag. His poke is full of gold dust, and his heart is full of sin, and he's dancing with a girl called Muckluck Mag. She's as light as any fairy. She's as pretty as a peach. She's mistress of the witchcraft to beguile. There's sunshine in her manner, there's music in her speech, and there's concentrated honey in her smile. Oh, the fever of the dance hall, and the glitter and the shine, the beauty and the jewels and the whirl, the madness of the music, the rapture of the wine, the languorous allurement of a girl. She is like a lost Madonna. He is gaunt, unkempt, and grim, but she fondles him and gazes in his eyes. Her kisses seek his heavy lips, and soon it seems to him he has staked a little claim in paradise. "Who's for a juicy two-step?" cries the master of the floor. The music throbs with soft, seductive beat. There's glitter, guilt, and gladness. There are pretty girls galore. There's a woolly man with moccasins on feet. They know they've got him going. He is buying wine for all. They crowd around as buzzards to a feast. Then, when his poke is empty, they boost him from the hall and spurn him in the gutter like a beast. He's the man from El Dorado, and he's painting red the town. Behind, he leaves a trail of yellow dust. In a whirl of senseless riot, he is ramping up and down. There's nothing checks his madness and his lust. Soon the word is passed around. It travels like a flame. They fight to clutch his hand and call him friend. The chevaliers of lost repute, the dames of sorry fame. Then comes the grim awakening, the end. He's the man from El Dorado, and he gives a grand affair. There's feasting, dancing, wine without restraint. The smooth bow brummels of the bar, the pharaoh men are there. The tin horns and purveyors of red paint. The sleek and painted women, their predacious eyes aglow. Sure, Klondike City never saw the like. Then Muckluck Mag proposed a toast. The giver of the show, the livest sport that ever hit the pike. The live one rises to his feet. He stammers to reply, and then there comes before his muddled brain a vision of green vastitudes beneath an April sky and clover pastures drenched in silver rain. He knows that it can never be, that he is down and out. Life leers at him with foul and fetid breath. Then, amid the revelry, the song and cheer and shout, he suddenly grows grim and cold as death. He grips the table tensely, and he says, "Dear friends of mine, I've let you dip your fingers in my purse. I've crammed you at my table, and I've drowned you in my wine, and I've little left to give you but my curse. I've failed supremely in my plans. It's rather late to whine. My poke is mighty wizened up and small. I thank you each for coming here. The happiness is mine. And now, you thieves and harlots, take it all." He twists the thong from off his poke. He swings it o'er his head. The nuggets fall around their feet like grain. They rattle over roof and wall. They scatter, roll, and spread. The dust is like a shower of golden rain. The guests a moment stand aghast, then grovel on the floor. They fight and snarl and claw like beasts of prey. And then, as everybody grabbed and everybody swore, the man from El Dorado slipped away. He's the man from El Dorado. And they found him stiff and dead, half covered by the freezing ooze and dirt. A clotted coat was in his hand, a hole was in his head, and he wore an old and oily buckskin shirt. His eyes were fixed and horrible, as one who hails the end. The frost had set him rigid as a log. There, half lying on his breast, his last and only friend, there crouched and whined a mangy yellow dog. When I was a boy in Dawson City, the eggs took weeks to reach us each winter, and they were the color of the setting sun, and they had a nice, strong flavor. Sometimes female egg packers on the outside used to write messages on the shells, and it is this that provided service with a theme for his Ballad of Hard Luck Henry. Now, wouldn't you expect to find a man, an awful crank, that's staked out nigh 300 claims and every one a blank, that's followed every fool stampede and seen the rise and fall of camps where men got gold in chunks and he got none at all, that's prospected a bit of ground and sold it for a song to see it yield a fortune to some fool who came along, that sunk a dozen bedrock holes and not a speck in sight, yet sees them take $1 million from the claims to left and right? Now, aren't things like that enough to drive a man to booze? But Hard Luck Smith was hoodoo-proof. He knew the way to lose. It was in the fall of 1904, leap year, I've heard them say, when Hard Luck came to Hunker Creek and took a hillside lay. And lo, as if to make amends for all the futile past, late in the year, he struck it rich. The real pay streak, at last. The riffles of his sluicing box were choked with speckled earth, and night and day he worked that lay for all that he was worth, and when in chill December's gloom his lucky lease expired, he found that he had made a stake as big as he desired. One day, while meditating on the waywardness of fate, he felt the ache of lonely man to find a fitting mate, a petticoated pard to cheer his solitary life, a woman with soft, soothing ways, a confidant, a wife. While he cooked his supper in his little Yukon stove, he wished that he had staked a claim in love's rich treasure trove, when suddenly he paused and held aloft a Yukon egg, for there in penciled letters was the magic name of Peg. You know these Yukon eggs of ours, some pink, some green, some blue, $1 per, assorted tints. assorted flavors, too. The supercilious Chichako might designate them high, but one acquires a taste for them and likes them by and by. Well, Hard Luck Henry took this egg and held it to the light, and there was more faint penciling that sorely taxed his sight. At last, he made it out. And then the legend ran like this. Will Klondike Miner write to Peg? Plum Hollow, Squashville, Wiss? That night he got to thinking of his far-off unknown fair. It seemed so sort of opportune, an answer to his prayer. She flitted sweetly through his dreams. She haunted him by day. She smiled through clouds of nicotine. She cheered his weary way. At last he yielded to the spell. His course of love he set. Wisconsin, his objective point. His object, Margaret. With every mile of sea and land, his longing grew and grew. He practiced all his pretty words, and these I fear were few. At last, one frosty evening, with a cold chill down his spine, he found himself before her house, the threshold of her shrine. His courage flickered to a spark, then glowed with sudden flame. He knocked. He heard a welcome word. She came. His goddess came. Oh, she was fair as any flower, and huskily he spoke. I'm all the way from Klondike with a mighty heavy poke. I'm looking for a lassie, one whose Christian name is Peg, who sought a Klondike miner and who wrote it on an egg. The lassie gazed at him a space. Her cheeks grew rosy red. She gazed at him with tear-bright eyes. Then tenderly she said, yes, lonely Klondike miner, it is true. My name is Peg. It's also true I longed for you and wrote it on an egg. My heart went out to someone in that land of night and cold. But oh, I fear that Yukon egg must have been mighty old. I waited long, I hoped and feared. You should have come before. I've been a wedded woman now for 18 months or more. I'm sorry. Since you came so far, you ain't the one that wins. But won't you take a step inside? I'll let you see the twins. Lake LaBarge is part of the Yukon River system and, of course, part of the famous Trail of 98. In Robert Service's day, there was an old derelict, a stern-wheel steamer broken down, 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 a stern-wheel steamer broken down on the shore. It was called the Olive May. Slightly disguised, it provided him with one of his most famous themes in the cremation of Sam McGee. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge I cremated Sam McGee. Now, Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the south to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell, though he'd often say in his homely way that he'd sooner live in hell. On a Christmas day, we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of your cold, through the parka's fold it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we'd close, then the lashes froze till sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed and the stars o'erhead were dancing heel to toe, he turned to me. And, Cap, says he, I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request. Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no. Then he says with a sort of moan, it's the cursed cold, and it's got right hold till I'm chilled clean through to the bone. It tain't being dead. It's my awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains. A pal's last need is a thing to heed, so I swore I wouldn't fail, and we started on at the streak of dawn. But God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched on his sleigh, and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee. And before nightfall, a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and I hurried, horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. 'Twas lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, you may tax your brawn and brains, but you promise true. And it's up to you to cremate my last remains. Now, a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb, in my heart how I cursed that load. In the long, long night by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in a ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows. Oh, God, how I loathed that thing. And every day, that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow. On I went, though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad. I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in. And I'd often sing to that hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin, till I came to the marge of Lake Labarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trace it was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. Then, here, said I with a sudden cry, is my crematoria. Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying around, and I heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared, and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. The heavens scowled, and the huskies howled, and the wind began to blow. It was icy cold. The hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I don't know why. And the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear. The stars came out, and they danced about ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked, and it's time I looked. Then the door I opened wide, and there sat Sam, looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace roar. And he wore a smile you could see a mile, and he said, please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plumtree down in Tennessee, it's the first time I've been warm. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake Labarge. I cremated Sam McGee. When I was a boy of 6, my family and I floated down the Yukon River in a poling boat, and I vividly remember the day when a wild, unkempt man raced from his lonely cabin to the riverbank to plead with us to stop a while and talk to him. He was a telegraph operator, one of the breed described by Service in his poem, The Telegraph Operator. I will not wash my face, I will not brush my hair, I pig about the place. There's nobody to care, nothing but rock and tree, nothing but wood and stone. Oh, God, it's hell to be alone, alone, alone. Snow peaks and deep gashed draws corral me in a ring. I feel as if I was the only living thing on all this blighted earth. And so I frowst and shrink, and crouching by my hearth, I hear the thoughts I think. I think of all I miss, the boys I used to know, the girls I used to kiss, the coin I used to blow, the bars I used to haunt, the racket and the row, the beers I didn't want. I wish I had 'em now. Day after day, the same, only a little worse. No one to grouch or blame. Oh, for a loving curse. Oh, in the night I fear, haunted by nameless things, just for a voice to cheer, just for a hand that clings. Faintly as from a star, voices come o'er the line, voices of ghosts afar, not in this world of mine, lives in whose loom I grope, words in whose weft I hear, eager, the thrill of hope, awful, the chill of fear. I'm thinking out aloud. I reckon that's bad. The snow is like a shroud. Maybe I'm going mad. Say, wouldn't that be tough? This awful hush that hugs and chokes one is enough to make a man go bugs. There's not a thing to do. I can't sleep at night. No wonder I'm so blue. Oh, for a friendly fight, the din and rush of strife, a music hall aglow, a crowd, a city, life. Dear God, I miss it so. Here, you've moped enough. Brace up, play the game. Say it's awful tough, day after day, the same. I've said that twice, I bet. Well, there's not much to say. I wish I had a pet, or something I could play. Cheer up, don't get so glum and sick of everything. The worst is yet to come. God help you till the spring. God shield you from the fear. Teach you to laugh, not moan. Ha ha! Sounds so queer alone. Alone. Above all other things, Robert Service loathed and hated his most famous ballad, The Shooting of Dan McGrew. He had written more than 1,000 poems at the time of his death, but the only one he was ever really asked to recite was that one. Though many people to this very day insist that this really happened, that they were there when it happened even, it's all pure fiction. Service wrote it before he'd ever seen Dawson, and there never was a Malamute saloon, or a lady known as Lou, or a Dan McGrew, except in his own fertile imagination. But this poem has now become as much a part of our heritage as the wreck of the Hesperus, or the road to Mandalay, or the face on the barroom floor. Here it is. Bunch of the boys are hooping it up in the Malamute saloon. The kid that handles the music box is hitting a jag time tune. Back at the bar in a solo game sat Dangerous Dan McGrew. And watching his luck was his light of love, the lady that's known as Lou. When, out of the night, which was 50 below, and into the dim and the glare, there stumbled a miner, fresh from the creeks, dog dirty and loaded for bear. He looked like a man with a foot in the grave and scarcely the strength of a louse, yet he tilted a poke of dust on the bar and he called for drinks for the house. There's none could place the stranger's face, though we searched ourselves for a clue, but we drank his health. And the last to drink was Dangerous Dan McGrew. There's men that somehow just grip your eyes and hold 'em hard like a spell, and such was he. He looked to me like a man who had lived in hell, with a face most hair and the dreary stare of a dog whose day is done. He watered the green stuff in his glass. The drops fell one by one. I got to figuring who he was and wondering what he'd do, and I turned my head. There, watching him, was the lady that's known as Lou. His eyes went rubbering round the room, and he seemed in a kind of a daze, till at last an old piano fell in the way of his wandering gaze. Ragtime Kid was having a drink. There was nobody else on the stool, so the stranger stumbles across the room and flops down there like a fool. In a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt he sat, and I saw him sway. Then he clutched the keys with his talon hands. My God, how that man could play. Were you ever out in the great alone? The moon was awful clear, and the icy mountains hemmed you in with a silence you most could hear, and only the howl of a timber wolf as you camped there in the cold, a half-dead thing in a stark dead world, clean mad for the muck called gold, while overhead, green, yellow, red, the north lights swept in bars. And you've a hunch what that music meant. Hunger, a night, and the stars. And hunger, not of the belly kind that's banished with bacon and beans, but the gnawing hunger of lonely men for a home, and all that that means, for a fireside far from the cares that are, 4 walls and a roof above, but oh, so cramful of cozy joy, and crowned with a woman's love, woman dearer than all the world, and true as heaven is true. God, how ghastly she looks through her rouge, the lady that's known as Lou. Then, on a sudden, the music changed, so soft that you scarce could hear. But you felt that your life had been looted of all that it once held dear, that someone had stolen the woman you loved, that her love was a devil's lie, that your guts were gone, and the best for you was to crawl away and die. It was the crowning cry of a heart's despair, and it thrilled you through and through. I guess I'll make it a spread misere, said dangerous Dan McGrew. The music almost died away. Then it burst like a pent-up flood, and it seemed to say, repay, repay, and my eyes were blind to the blood. The thought came back of an ancient wrong. It stung like a frozen lash. The lust awoke to kill, and the music stopped. The crash, and a stranger turned, and his eyes, they burned in a most peculiar way. In a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt he sat. I saw him sway. Then his lips went in a kind of grin, and he spoke, and his voice was calm. And, boys, says he, you don't know me. None of you give a damn. But I want a state, and my words are straight, and I'll bet my poke they're true that one of you is a hound of hell, and that one is Dan McGrew. I ducked my head, the lights went out, 2 guns blazed in the dark. Olin screamed, the lights went up. 2 men lay stiff and stark. Pitched on his head and pumped full of lead lay dangerous Dan McGrew, while the man from the creeks lay clutched to the breast of the lady that's known as Lou. These are the simple facts of the case, and I guess I ought to know. They say the stranger was crazed with hooch, and I'm not denying it's so. I'm not so wise as the lawyer guys. But strictly between us 2, the woman that kissed him and pinched his poke was the lady that's known as Lou.